Thank you for joining today's session, and I look forward to seeing all of you for the next 3 days, and hopefully you'll learn a lot about ILSA and Jessup in the process. My name is Lorraine Atieno. Currently the National Administrator of the Kenya National Rounds of the Jessup competition. We are conducting this session to keep all students, trainers, and everyone involved aware of the resources that come with the Jessup competition and how you can prepare for the same. So I look forward to engagement. I look forward to seeing all of you in the course of the next 3 days. Yeah, so a bit of housekeeping rules. You're allowed to turn your cameras on, but kindly keep it respectful. If you have any questions, kindly put it in the chat box and we'll address it towards the end of every session. I believe you've received an outline of the topics we are discussing today, so kindly keep your questions in line with the topics that we are discussing. Yeah. And yeah, engage with us. If you have any comments or anything, you can also engage with me via my email. And yeah, I believe we can start. I'll be introducing my fellow national administrators with time. They are yet to join the meeting. And I believe most students will be joining as we proceed with the session. So I hope your notebooks are ready. I hope you have your questions ready. For the questions you sent earlier, I have already sent it to the various facilitators and they'll be able to respond to them in the course of the session. Yeah. So the best way to start any Jessup session is by inviting the executive director. Yeah. So we are lucky to have Michael Pyle in the meeting, who is the executive director of the International Law Students Association. So we'll start. He'll give you an introduction to ILSA and Jessup and any questions you may ask in the course of the session. So Michael, welcome. The podium is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me just make sure. Am I visible and audio and audible?
Yes, you are.
Excellent, excellent. I have you pinned in the middle of my screen for some reason, so I couldn't see if I could see myself. So let me start, first of all, by asking everybody on the call to please put in the chat window your name and what school and country you're from. It would be interesting to see who's in the room. And then while so please enter that in the chat window. For example, I am Michael Pyle, ILSA, United States. Boom. Anyway, while we're waiting for that to populate, good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Pyle, and I'm the Executive Director of the International Law Students Association, or ILSA. ILSA is the organization that runs the Jessup competition worldwide, and in particular, we directly administer the White and Case international rounds of the Jessup competition, the apex of the competition that takes place in Washington. This means basically I'm the guy who's in charge of the Jessup competition. I'd like to begin by thanking our organizers, Ms. Lorraine Atieno and her entire staff for putting together this wonderful event. Lorraine and her team are responsible for administering the national rounds of the Jessup competition in Kenya, but starting last year have also taken it upon themselves to promote the Jessup competition across Africa. This event, now in its second year, is the most visible example of their efforts to broaden and deepen the Jessup competition throughout the continent. I thank you all very much, and I thank you for having me. The Jessup competition is, by far, the largest competition for law students in the world. Last year, more than 800 law schools in more than 100 countries registered for the competition, and 704 of those teams ended up competing. Of those, 162 traveled to Washington, D.C. for the international rounds. Now in its 67th year, we like to call the Jessup the World Cup or the Olympics of international law. It was founded way back in 1959, 1960 by professors Richard Baxter and Stephen Schwabel, both of whom went on to become judges at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Our recent alumni include at least three judges on the current ICJ, Hilary Charlesworth of Australia and Georg Nolte of Germany, both of whom competed when they were law students in the 1980s, and Diri Tladi of South Africa, who competed in the same year I did, in 1997. He and I competed in the same year. His team did much better than my team did. I've been involved with the Jessup competition since 1995 when I competed as a student for a couple of years. I stayed involved after graduation and have served at various times as a coach, a judge, a national administrator, a member of the ILSA board of directors, an author, an editor of the annual Jessup Problem, and of course, now as executive director of ILSA, a role that I've served a total of about 9 years now. I've met so many great teams and volunteer judges from across Africa in that time, and I fully support the efforts of all of our friends across Africa to broaden and deepen the reach of Jessup throughout the country. Now, I've been asked to give a little bit of background on the Jessup competition in Africa, which I'm happy to do, and also to talk a little bit about what you can expect over the coming 8 months. So let's start by talking about the history of the Jessup competition in Africa. Africa has enjoyed success almost from the moment it joined the competition. Our first African team was among the first teams in the world. Haile Selassie University in Ethiopia joined the Jessup competition in 1971, making Ethiopia only the third or fourth country in the world to participate in the Jessup. And in their second year competing, they advanced to the World Championship match. In 1974, in their fourth year of competing, they advanced to the World Championship match again. And in that same year, the University of Zambia from Zambia made it all the way to the World semifinal match. So we had two African teams among the four semifinalists in the world. It was a long stretch after that for a number of reasons, including cost and including politics in the home country. But the next time we see an African success was all the later in 1997, the year I competed, when the University of Pretoria in South Africa advanced to the round of 16. That was, as I mentioned, the team with His Excellency Diri Tladi, who's now at the ICJ. We then start to see the African success pick up. In 2002, University of the Witwatersrand in South Africa won the Jessup Cup, won the World Championship. In 2003, the very next year, the University of Nairobi from Kenya, and I remember this team very well, advanced to the round of 16. That year, we also held the Kenyan national rounds in Washington, D.C. We had two teams that made it to Washington. In 2006, the University of Cape Town in South Africa advanced to the world semifinal rounds. And in that same year, University of Nairobi again advanced to the round of 16. Then we have a gap, and in 2015, the University of Nairobi made it to the round of 32. In 2017, the University of Pretoria made it to the round of 16. The next year, University of Pretoria made it all the way to the quarterfinals. In 2019, Great Zimbabwe University advanced to the round of 32. That was the year before COVID. And then just last year, Strathmore University from Kenya advanced to the world quarterfinals. So as you can see, there's been a constant drumbeat of success from our African teams. We never see, 8 African teams having a great year in the same year at the international rounds, but just a constant drip, drip, drip of constant improvement and teams moving up in the rankings and so on and so forth. Students from 29 African countries have competed in the Jessup competition over the 54 years that we've seen Africa compete. As I mentioned, Ethiopia was the first African nation to participate in the Jessup. After 30 years of on-again, off-again participation, starting in the 1970s, Ethiopia has been a pretty consistent participant since 2005, with as many as 5 schools participating in its largest year. Zambia became the second African country to participate in the Jessup in 1972, and in its very first year advanced to the world semifinals match. For about 30 years, only one school, University of Zambia, competed. But then in 2019, just before COVID, all of a sudden we saw a number of Zambian schools competing. And our largest Zambian national rounds were actually a couple of years ago in 2024, when 8 law schools in Zambia competed in the Jessup competition. Liberia also joined the Jessup competition in 1972, with the University of Liberia competing consistently until 1981. Now, Liberia has disappeared from the Jessup world in recent years. We have not seen a Liberian team since 2005. In 1973, University of Lagos joined the competition, becoming the first Nigerian team and the 4th African country. Since 2003, Nigeria has been one of the stalwarts of the Jessup competition, and their largest Nigerian national rounds were in 2009, when 15 teams competed. This is tied for the record for largest African national rounds ever. 1977 was a huge year for Jessup. 2 of our big African countries joined the competition for the first time in 77. University of Ghana competed in the international rounds, and Ghana saw its big surge its big surge in 2016 when 10 Ghanaian teams competed. 2024, we also saw 10 Ghanaian teams compete. Also in 1977, Makerere University became the first Ugandan team to participate in the Jessup. Uganda has been pretty consistent over the intervening 48 years, and last year's Uganda national rounds, when 7 teams competed, the largest ever. We had a couple teams from South Africa submit memorials in 1979 and 1980, but the country didn't fully participate until the end of the apartheid regime. In 1993, the University of Pretoria became the first South African team to come to Washington. And 10 years later, we had our biggest year ever in South Africa when, again, tying Nigeria's record, 15 schools competed in the South African national rounds. Botswana was actually a regular participant in the Jessup competition for decades. From 1991 to 2008, a team from University of Botswana came to Washington 14 times in 8 years. They disappeared after 2008, but happily came back to the competition last year for the first time in 17 years. In 1981 and 1983, a team from Morocco submitted memorials, but Morocco has never attended the international rounds. I'm happy to report that we do have a team registered this year from Morocco, so we are hoping to see our first team in Washington from Morocco ever. Now we get our 10th African country. In 1983, a team from Lesotho submitted memorials. The National University of Lesotho came to Washington for the first time the next year. Starting in 2007, NUL became much more consistent, and they have participated in 13 of the last 19 Jessup competitions. We had another big country here, and one near and dear to our heart on this call. In 1984, the University of Nairobi from Kenya submitted memorials. Now, we wouldn't see our first Kenyan team in Washington until 1998, 14 years later. But Kenya is a country on the rise. Not only did Strathmore make it to the quarterfinals last year, but the last 2 years have seen the largest ever Kenyan national rounds, with 6 teams competing in both 2024 and 2025. Then known as Swaziland, Eswatini competed in the Jessup from 1984 to 1989, but they haven't been back in more than 35 years. Likewise, a team from the University of Khartoum in Sudan submitted memorials in 1984, 85, and 87. So I suppose they're technically the 11th or 13th or whatever team to compete in the Jessup, but the only other year Sudan has participated was in the online year of 2022, and they've never sent a team to Washington. Now, University of Zimbabwe submitted memorials in 1985 and then came to Washington 2 years later. They didn't have national rounds in Zimbabwe until 2019, but in the last 2 years, they've had their largest national rounds ever, with 3 schools consistently competing each year. Now, in 1989, the National University of Rwanda submitted memorials. They then attended the international rounds in 1998 and 2000, but they haven't even submitted memorials since 2006. you're hearing a common theme here with Rwanda, Morocco. You'll hear about DRC in a moment, but we've always had a real problem attracting Francophone law schools, which is what National University of Rwanda was at the time. But we're hopeful now. We've seen a couple of Rwandan law schools expressing interest over the last couple of years, so we're really hoping to see Rwanda back soon. In 1993, the University of Dar es Salaam became the first ever Tanzanian university to participate in the Jessup. Now, they didn't come to Washington until 2000, and again in 2008. We just had our largest Tanzanian national rounds in 2024 with 4 teams competing. Now we cross into the 21st century. In 2001, the University of Namibia joined the competition for the first time, and they came to Washington. They competed 9 times over that decade, but they haven't been back. So let's get Namibia back in. Egypt joined the Jessup competition in 2002, and they had 1 team participating from 2000. Sorry,
Sorry,
I was
maybe
mute.
by mistake. Sorry.
Can you hear me? Just a sec. I'm hearing noise in the background.
Kindly continue speaking because he's pinned on my end. When you speak, he unpins.
Check. 1, 2. Can you hear me?
Okay. Thank you.
There we go. Much better. Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me? Excellent.
Yes, we can.
As I was saying, I think I was on Egypt, but Egypt joined in 2002. They were a 1-team country until 2009, but then Egypt came back in force with a couple of law firms, one Egyptian and one international, running the competition, and they've been growing ever since. Our largest year in Egypt was 2020, when 10 Egyptian schools participated in the Jessup. Now, Democratic Republic of the Congo submitted memorials in 2003. That was the first time the DRC ever participated in the Jessup. The schools express interest every so often, but we've never seen a DRC team in Washington. In 2003, Cameroon became the 20th African country in the Jessup competition. And in fact, we've had as many as 3 law schools competing for many years, but we have not seen a Cameroonian team in the Jessup since 2012. The Republic of the Congo, in 2003, we had a team from University of Brazzaville submit memorials, and we've had as many as 2 teams compete in a particular year. We've actually had ROC national rounds, but we haven't had a team participate since 2006. In 2005, Mali submitted memorials, but they were unable to travel to Washington. We get emails every so often, but Mali has never been to the international rounds. The Gambia first submitted memorials in 2006, but they haven't attended the international round since 2012. I'm in touch, and I think there's somebody on the line from the Gambia. I've been in touch with potential teams. Let's make it happen. A couple other big ones coming up. In 2012, Sierra Leone joined the competition with a team from Fora Bay College submitting memorials. They first attended the international rounds in 2019, and we had our first ever Leonese national rounds in 2023. We now have 3 regular teams competing in Sierra Leone, and it's a great setup. Now, in 2019, a team from University of Juba in South Sudan submitted memorials, making South Sudan the 25th African country to compete. However, for obvious reasons, they haven't been able to participate since that year. In 2023 and 2024, we had our first ever Tunisian team competing and coming to Washington. And last year, we had our first ever Tunisian national rounds, and 4 teams participated. In 2024, we had a team from Niger submit memorials, but they were unable to come. And then last year, we had 2 countries compete for the first time. Universidade Agostinho Neto from Angola and University of São Tomé and Príncipe in STP. Both submitted memorials, both participated in friendly rounds, but they were unable to get their visas in time, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, to come to Washington. Both of them were working out of the Angolan embassy. So it was a big year for Lusophone Africa, with 2 Portuguese-speaking teams competing for the first time. So that's it. Over the years, we've had almost 200 African law schools, different law schools, from 29 countries in 55 years of participation. 13 of those teams have advanced to the elimination rounds at the international rounds over that time. And I'm expecting, with the way the curve is growing, we'll see more in the coming years as the Jessup grows and deepens, beginning with events like this. So, the next part of my presentation. You want to be country number 30 from Africa, or you want to be the second African team ever to win the Jessup Cup. Where do you start? Where do we go from here? Well, the first step is to gather and register a team. The Jessup problem, it's a compromise this year, was just released last week and is available on the ILSA website at ilsa.org. Now, first thing you need to do, as most of you know, is find 2 to 5 students, LLB students or LLM students who've never practiced law, to be on your team. Register your team anytime before November 21st. Go to our website at jessup.ilsa.org and register that team. You don't have to pay the registration fee at the time you register the team. You need to register the team to get emails about the competition and have a team portal page, which you get as soon as you register. And then you can pay anytime before November 21st. For most countries on this call, the standard registration fee is around US $130. And that's for the entire team. Over the next couple of months, your team will do their research and prepare your written arguments. We'll release the corrections. We'll release the corrections and clarifications to the compromise this fall. That's an update to the compromise that is responsive to questions about the fact pattern, again, called the corrections and clarifications. And in the coming weeks, we'll release a large batch of basic materials to help you in your research. These basic materials are law review articles, book chapters, and other resources that the authors and editors of this year's compromise have hand-selected as being useful to teams in understanding the legal issues involved in this year's problem. You shouldn't stop your research with the basic materials, but you should definitely take a look. We also provide all our Jessup teams with free access to the excellent international legal databases available at LexisNexis, Oxford University Press, and Jus Mundi. We hope in this way to help level the playing field between law schools with vastly different library and other research resources. And then your next big deadline is the 12th of January, 2026. That's the day your team is required to submit your 2 written memorials, one on behalf of applicant and one on behalf of respondent, your written arguments to ILSA via that team portal page that you received when you registered. Now, on our website, you can find examples of award-winning memorials from previous years. That's also accessible from your team portal page, and that will help guide you if you're unclear about the format. We also have a number of resources and guides available on your team portal page to help you in your research and writing process. And these resources are written by Jessup alumni, coaches, and judges. Now, once you've submitted the memorials, for those of you who are the only team in your entire country, now is the time to start preparing for the international rounds in Washington. If you are the only team in your country, as I say, then the moment you submit your memorials, you are officially the national champions and you qualify to represent your country at the international rounds in Washington. Now, for those of you in a country where 2 or more teams are competing, you now need to start your team preparing for your national rounds. These are the oral rounds organized by an ILSA volunteer in your country, where we determine who is the national champion. Now, to help you in your preparation for the national rounds, for the oral rounds, we have a number of print resources and videos available from your team portal page. In fact, right now we're working on a judge's commentary to last year's World Championship round, where you can hear what judges have to say about a match as it's going on. Depending on the number of teams competing in your country, either 1 or 2 champions will be anointed at your national rounds, and they are then eligible to travel to Washington to represent your country, the White and Case at the international rounds. Now, as soon as you know you're coming to Washington, you need to apply for US visas and also work on fundraising. Regarding fundraising, ILSA doesn't have a lot of money available to help teams, but I am happy to work with you to find local or international donors and also to reach out to them directly to see if they can help. Your law school, your National Bar Association, and other organizations may also be willing to help. Now, importantly, I mentioned visas because, as most of you know, the situation for non-immigrant visas to the United States is confusing and chaotic and is only getting more so. Every week, we hear stories of new fees being imposed, of delays, and so on and so forth, even visa bans. You need to get an early start on the process. And if you have any questions or concerns, please contact me directly as soon as possible. If you have visa issues as a team or a judge coming to Washington, don't feel like you're wasting my time. I need to know if there's a problem. I can sometimes be of some help, but not if you contact me 2 days before your flight is supposed to take off. And that's what happened with a couple of teams last year. They waited too long, and then they contacted me 2 days before their flight and said, we can't get visas. So the international rounds themselves will take place in Washington, D.C. this year, or next year, from March 28th to April 4th, 2026. The international rounds are amazing. More than 150 teams, that's about 700 law students from more than 100 countries compete. We have about 250 judges from around the world representing 60 to 80 countries. And those judges are practitioners, professors, jurists, scholars, publicists, politicians, all passionate about international law. Let's break down the international rounds. The rounds begin on Saturday, the 28th, with the opening ceremony. You and all the other teams in the international rounds are welcomed, and we have an Olympics-style parade of nations where every national champion places their national flag in the row of flags of competing countries. So if you visit our website, you can see a picture of that happening. That evening, Saturday evening, you find out who your opponents will be for the week. And between Sunday and Wednesday, your team will compete 4 times, twice as applicant and twice as respondent, in what we call the preliminary rounds. Then on Wednesday evening, based upon those 4 matches, we announce the teams who will advance to the elimination rounds of the competition, which will begin on Thursday morning. And then on Thursday and Friday, we have over 40 elimination matches, narrowing the teams down to the 2 who will compete in the World Championship Jessup Cup match on Saturday afternoon, April 4th. The World Championship is usually argued before 3 judges from the actual International Court of Justice or other leading jurists, scholars, and practitioners from around the world in a match in front of about 1,000 people in the live audience and tens of thousands of viewers of our live stream around the world. But before the World Championship, we have what is for some people the highlight of Jessup Week, the Go National Dress Ball. On Friday evening, every team and most of the judges come to a dance party dressed in something evocative of their national culture, history, and traditions. It's pretty amazing. And I do have to say, some of the most memorable outfits have been from some of our teams from Africa over the years. So that's it, I guess. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to any questions you might have. I am looking forward to, as I say, a broadening and deepening of Jessup throughout the continent and to a continued and improving success among our African teams. Thank you, and it's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much, Michael. Does anyone have any questions at the moment? Silas in the chat box has asked, please share your email in the Jessup website in the chat. I've shared the ILSA website. You can maybe talk more about the email. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
They're both, for those of you not looking at the chat, there are, the email address is jessup@ilsa.org, and our website is www.ilsa.org. Harsh Verma says, how many teams will advance from India to the international rounds? So as I said, it depends on how many teams compete in your national rounds. The formula is take the number of teams that compete in your national rounds and divide by 8. So we don't know how many teams are coming to Washington from India until the national rounds. Now, India gets a +1 because an Indian team advanced to the elimination rounds last year, as does Kenya, by the way, because Strathmore advanced to the elimination rounds. So if, let's say, 48 Indian teams compete next year, which is a typical number for India, we divide that by 8, we get 6, then we add 1, and that's 7. If all 1,400 accredited Indian law schools were to compete, that's a very different matter, and we would end up with well in excess of 150 Indian teams coming to the international rounds. We would be swamped by India, and we would probably just move the international rounds to Delhi.
Okay, any other questions? Um, okay, there's a question here. If the application for a remote coach is successful, when can the coach start helping the team?
Remote coach, we're doing it on a rolling basis. There's some confusion. Some teams apply for a remote coach before they register their team. You do need to register your team on the ILSA website. You don't need to pay, but you do need to be registered as a team. And then we will match your team with somebody in your time zone or with somebody who has qualified to be a remote coach. We'll introduce the two of you, and they can start immediately. The next question, does Egypt have a +1 or just one team? Egypt does not have the +1, so we will get, because no Egyptian team advanced to the elimination rounds last year. So Egypt will get the number of teams divided by 8, but we round to the nearest whole number. So if you can get 12 teams in Egypt next year, Egypt will get 2 teams. Just scrolling through the list of countries represented here to see if there's anybody. Okay. 2 more questions. All right. So Tanya George asks, would it be advisable to begin the visa process before the national rounds just in case? The only reason not to do it is cost. I'm happy to help you with a letter of reference, so on and so forth. Email us. A lot of teams and a lot of law schools want to wait to see if they have qualified for the international rounds yet before applying. Obviously, if you know you're the only school applying from your country, if you are Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, then apply right now. It's the moment you know who's going to be traveling with the team, apply now, because visas are slow and there's a lot of paperwork. If you are financially able to, apply now, and then you'll find out whether you're going to Washington or not after your national rounds. But I know a lot of teams just can't afford to do that, or their sponsors won't pay the visa application fee until they know they're coming. Okay, Techno KJ5, what country are you from? I see Techno KJ5 has asked, is winning a national moot court a must to participate? Techno KJ5, what country are you from? While we're waiting for that answer, you do not need to win a national moot court to participate in the Jessup. If you are the only only team in your entire country participating in the Jessup, then you are automatically the national champions. And once you submit your memorials, you are permitted to advance to Washington, D.C. Okay, you're in Ethiopia. Ethiopia does have multiple teams, and so you need to register, submit your memorials in January, and then Ethiopia has national rounds. And last year we had 5 teams compete in those national rounds. You will compete in the Jessup Ethiopia national rounds, and the winner of those national rounds advances to Washington. Is that clear? Other questions? Keep them coming, folks. I love the questions. Has everybody had a chance to read the new Jessup problem? It dropped about 10 days ago, 9 days ago, and is available on our website. It's the case concerning the Gordian Gorge. Uh, I like it. Looking forward to seeing what the Jessup teams make of it. All right. If there are no other questions, I will happily and with great humility give the podium back to our convener. Thank you very much again for having me, and I wish you all a fantastic 3 days ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for opening the session for us. And as everyone can see, he's very open and willing to assist you throughout the competition. So the email jessup@ilsa.org. If you have any questions relating to the Jessup in the course of your preparations for the competition, and even in the process of applying, feel free to ask him and he'll always respond as soon as possible. So thank you so much, Michael. And yeah, now we will proceed to the next session. We need to hear from someone who has participated in the Jessup before. So everyone who will be facilitating these sessions in one way or another has participated in Jessup as a judge or as an administrator or as a student, team member in one way or another. So today I've invited Ayaga Max. I hope you're in the meeting. Yes, you're in the meeting. So Ayaga Max is a student at the University of Nairobi. He's a 2024 and 2025 Jessup or a Jessup participant. We call them Jessuppers. And I believe more details about his experience will be shared by him. So Max.
Hi, Lorraine. Hi, everyone. Hi, Pete. It's a pleasure seeing you all today, of course, virtually, and again, at least to speak about my perspective on Jessup and my experience altogether. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Max. Can anyone else confirm the same? I can hear you.
Yes.
I can see you.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're hearing. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Max Liambila Ayaga. I am a fourth-year law student at the University of Nairobi. Having participated in the Jessup Court competition in 2024 and equally in 2025, though I would say it was never by choice. Rarely do you get to do Jessup twice. Very few people have done Jessup twice at least, and most of the time the second time is always worse than the first time. But the background of this is that the University of Nairobi selected the team to participate in the Phillips E. Jessup Court competition in 2024. That was in 2023 then. We prepared our memorials, walked around, so many sleepless nights, proceeded to have our national rounds in February of 2024, where we competed favorably against around 8 or 9 teams in Strathmore, and we eventually won the national rounds against Kabarak, and got the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. Then it was around March 2024. But as you will know, with African countries and most of the countries around the world, we had our visa interviews scheduled for November, despite the fact that the competition was scheduled for March. So it was a little bit crazy, tried everything, pushed all the walls, but nothing moved. And we eventually had to give up and watch our names mentioned in Washington, D.C. as the teams that could not make it to the competition. Of course, we gave up because most of my team members then, Carl, Barbara, Victor, had graduated. And the only team that was remaining, part of the team, was myself and June. We eventually got our visas in September. Pale was very, very instructive, and I would confidently tell you he's the most important person, at least in the moot court in this Jessup moot court competition. You will need him each and every day of your life until March, when you travel to DC, and even after. So eventually we got our visas, and we were like, okay, let us give it another shot. And received the question, new topic, new area of law, like you guys are facing right now, and went right into it. It was very heavy, especially bearing in mind that we were only the two of us. Normally, Jessup is a moot that has a maximum of 5, and to a larger extent, you can be allowed to have 6 members. So when you get to Washington, you will realize that most of the teams that get to Washington have around 5 at the minimum, or even 4. Rarely will you get 2 people, because Jessup, and I'll get into this, is very heavy. It requires a lot of reading and a lot of research and a lot of perseverance and a lot of tenacity that you can't really do when you're 2 of you. So, but we eventually tried our best, went into the rounds, national rounds, once again, facing almost the same people we faced, but unfortunately we didn't win. We were the first runners up, and courtesy of the national administrator, we got an opportunity to go and compete in Washington, D.C., representing Kenya alongside Strathmore University. And the rounds went quite well, if I may say so, and not so well at the same time. It rarely goes so well with first time people, and especially sometimes you go into the competition with no coaches and all that, but we eventually won the Spirit of the Jessup award, which I am really, really happy to have won. Now, reverting back to maybe my experience, aside from the entire storyline up to Washington, D.C., I'd say, first of all, just starting on the bit of coaches, this aspect of having a remote coach is very important. And if there's one thing you can do as an African team, especially bearing in mind that you might not have a lot of faculty support, and even most of the teams around the world, it is very important for you to apply for the remote coaches. And Pele has mentioned that you can actually get a remote coach right now, even before paying your registration fee. So it's important for you to start linking up with your remote coaches early as now. For our part, we were actually very lucky to get a remote coach who actually paid for our accommodation in Washington, traveled with us. She was a lecturer from Leiden University. She's called Miss Kenting. So whoever will end up getting her as a remote coach this year will be very lucky. So you meet this person for the first time. Of course, they know you've made it to the rounds. You don't have funding. They help you crowdsource for funding. They help you prepare the memorials and prepare for orals. And they're quite very much experienced. And Jessup is a little bit different in the way it is judged as compared to the other moods. Even straight just from the memorial and how much the memorial has an impact to your oral scores. Most of the time we approach Jessup from a point of this is just any other international mood. It is not. I can tell you for free that winning a Jessup mood court competition starts from when those topics are announced in DC. And from there, when your school selects a team and when the problem comes out. If you are able to take that period of time between when the problem is out up to January 15th, when you're supposed to submit your Jessup memorials and the national rounds, and you are able to factor in your hard work and your tenacity, I can assure you will be proceeding to the global rounds. This is because most of the times we tend to delay quite a lot. Sometimes, and I wouldn't blame us, mostly it's the institutions, but it's in October and you're still not sure if you're supposed to be representing your school. You have not started working on the memorials, you've not started working on the on any argument. Writing your memorials in late December. And that is when you're supposed to be finishing your memorial first. The effect of that is that you will only probably have 10 days to prepare for the national rounds. I think for Uganda, it's actually probably 2 days after submitting memorials. Some countries, it's actually immediately the day after you've submitted your memorial. And Lorraine will tell you, and anyone who's done Jessup, is that what you have in your memorials probably isn't what you end up arguing in the oral rounds. And again, just finishing on the memorial bit of it, in a team that you're competing in Jessup, you need to have somebody who is specifically in charge of citations. You need to have somebody who is specifically in charge of the pre-pleadings first. There is the cover page, there is the index of authorities, there's the state facts, there is the rules of the Jessup. Personally, I was never aware of the rules of the Jessup moot court competition until now. I don't even know which rule says what's the number of words. But my teammate, June, that was her work. My work was to ensure our pleadings are right. So you need to have somebody who is able to tell you, that abbreviation is not allowed in Jessup, strike it out. Because if you don't do that, then you'll end up having a penalty. In 2024, we had a penalty of 5 marks. 5 marks. And 5 marks is so much in Jessup because if you have 80 in a memorial and you have a penalty of 5, that means you have a 75. And somebody else has a 77. And if someone has beaten you with a range of close to 10 points or 5 points in Jessup, you go into that oral phase as an underdog because they only need to win probably 1 or 2 judges and they're good to go. But you need to win all the judges since you've lost them on the memos. And that is something that is very different between Jessup and the rest of the moot court competitions that you do around, where you can score 40 in memorials and then end up winning the rounds. It is very difficult. In fact, when we were informed that we were proceeding to the semis, and we were actually lucky that then Lorraine and the administrators decided to have semis. If we didn't have semis, we probably wouldn't have proceeded. But then we were the 4th on the list, so we were number 4. But we were so good on orals, but our memorials were shitty because we didn't look at the rules, we didn't look at the citations. We started writing our memorials in December. So the entire hurry, and yet we were 5 people. But then in 2025, we had noticed that for you to win a Jessup moot court competition, there are very fine details that you need to take note of. And the first thing is your memorials. If you have the best memorials, you will, one, ace it in the national rounds, and you will equally ace it in the oral rounds in DC. The main reason why we won all our rounds on orals, but lost one round because of memos. And the effect of that is that we were not able to proceed to the round of 48. So you have to be very careful in how you draft the memos. And this also is very important for people who do not have coaches. Now, the remote coaches are very restricted to what they can do. They can't change your arguments. They can only advise. They can't restructure your arguments altogether. But you have to have someone who is able to pinpoint some of these errors. This full stop is not supposed to be here. This comma is not supposed to be here. This font is wrong. This font size is wrong. This number of words have exceeded the limit. But at least just of the number of words you can't really exceed unless you're too verbose. The other bit of it is the basic materials that are going to be released in a week, as Pale has mentioned. I noticed when the 2024 bench memorandum was released late last year for the rounds that we had in 2024, it was exactly the basic materials that were in the bench memorandum. Almost the same, just a little bit of a case law here and there that have been added. But the bench memorandum is just that, the basic materials, or anything that has been referenced inside those basic materials. And I don't know whether the bench memorandum of this year will be released. I'm waiting to see. But one thing I'm very sure is that the same cases that we relied upon are going to be in the bench memorandum. So those basic materials are not there for the sake of it. They are supposed to evoke a certain conversation. And that is why you'll get to DC and a team from OD and a team from Argentina is arguing the same thing. Because both of you have looked at the bench memorandum, both of you have looked at the basic materials. Which again brings me to another aspect, which is that how you look at a case law is very different in Jessup as to how you would just cite it haphazardly in your national moot court competitions or other international moot court competitions. Because the judge, to a larger extent, has been informed on what arguments you're supposed to present. It takes 6 months to draft this moot question. So trust me, the drafters of the question have looked at this question inside out, all the arguments that you can present and all the cases. So the bench memorandum kind of leads them to what they expect on a certain case law. And something very funny, and I'm still yet to understand it, and I've seen it's been presented a little bit in this year's question, question 1 on an intervention. You will realize that all of you will be relying on the same case law, the applicant and the respondent, and all of you will be saying, compare your case law should not be relied upon, and you will equally say why their case law should not be relied upon. So it makes for the judge who has a bench memorandum, and none of you has that bench memorandum. And both of you are trying to argue what you think would be in the bench memorandum. But again, there is a mistake that comes with the mooters, and we learned this in DC, that we tend to think that all the questions that the judges are asking are in the bench memorandum. So we are like, these might be the questions that are coming, or this is the argument that I need to advance and shelve this argument altogether. No. Look, unless the judge has completely ruled out your argument and pushed you to the wall to the extent that you don't have a response altogether and an alternative, that is when you can shelve an argument. Do not try to predict what would have been in the bench memorandum, because then you waste time and shelve some of the novel arguments. There is an argument that I had in DC that I had never had all through. And I was like, I remember writing a short note. I wish I'd taken some pictures of the short notes that we passed to each other in the rounds. And I remember writing to June, and I was like, we are done in Swahili. We are done, because I didn't have a response to that argument. Luckily, that question never came up, so I never responded to that issue, and we won that round just because of memorials. But there were arguments that I had that I hadn't had before, and the arguments that I advanced that I didn't hear any other applicant advancing altogether. So don't just shelve your arguments because you think someone else has a better argument. The other bit of it is Jessup is a team moot. It's not an individual moot. And the sad thing with Jessup is that you guys may fall out because of how intense the moot is. We actually did. We did in 2024, we did again in 2025, and in 2025 it was so extreme that one of us had to leave. So that's how intense Jessup can be, especially when it's in January and it's 2 days to the memorial submission and somebody has not cited their footnotes according to a scholar or the guidelines in the rules. So you all are stuck and they are not picking up their calls, or that is when somebody decides to go for a vacation and all that, and it becomes very chaotic. You will realize that with Jessup, you have to, there is something that this moot court competition does that I have realized we don't really do, especially African teams. And I have seen this with European teams. Though this is just a snippet I looked at. You go out, start drafting, go out for, let's say, have coffee with all your laptops, start thinking about the arguments somewhere else away from the library. Go out and try to form a team mentality. And something that is extra books, extra library, extra Juice Mundi and all those. Yeah? Find a way of building the team collegiality and building your arguments away from class. I think that really helped us is finish around and then go sit down. No, we'd go somewhere and sit next to, there used to be a very big river in DC. You all just sit and then start thinking about the arguments. What was this? What was this? Again, speaking about how to review around, I remember we almost fell out with my teammate because of how I reviewed her round. It was a very simple question. Can you ratify resolutions of the International Law Commission? And I told her, and then she said, you can. And then I was like, yeah, we are fucked up this round. I was like, this, because there's a time in a round, you're very sure that the opponent is weak. So you can't afford to make a mistake that will make the judges think twice because you want all the maximum points. And then someone is asked a question that you know very well they know the answer, and then they don't respond. So immediately after the round, I was like, nah, you fucked up. And quote unquote, that's the word I used. And we almost fell out. And you're 1,000 miles away from your country. The only the two of you can speak in Swahili in that room. The rest of the two remote coaches can't speak, and so it becomes chaotic. And so it's very important for you to how you handle certain things in because the effect and that simply means you guys have lost the mood. You will take a lot of painkillers. Once we had a chemist, so we'd have painkillers all and all. And it's very important for you to have an offshore counsel. Now, in as much as in the global rounds, you may not get the funding to take the offshore counsel to DC. please have an offshore counsel for the national rounds. And even if your school is registering a team of 2, ensure you have 2 more researchers. They can be in the junior classes, they can be your colleagues, seniors, but you really need people who are not oralists in a team when you're doing Jessup. You can handle in DC because you probably have a coach or you're already in DC. That's the word that we use. But you really need someone who is not mooting to give you the perspective of what is you two are probably not thinking about. The role of the offshore counsel is very important to the extent that they are also the ones who write the questions that the judges are asking for both sides, because at that point you are not focused on what the judges are asking. Normally you're focused on what you are supposed to be submitting. So that is their role. They write the questions, they point out the errors and all that. That's the role of the offshore counsel. So that role is very important, and most of the time we overlook it because we call them extras in the play, but they're very important. So ensure in your team you have an offshore counsel, in as much as they might not be traveling, just have them, even if they're juniors, equally researchers, because they're the ones who will get the opportunity to read the case law inside out. And like I was mentioning, the problem with the ICJ cases is that there are 80 pages, close to, I'm sure you guys will be applying the advisory opinion of the ICJ, the recent one. And it's 216 pages, close to 400 pages of documents that were submitted before the court, close to 10 separate opinions by the judge. So you need somebody who's able to look at those separate opinions, because as a respondent, sadly, it's only those separate opinions that will help you. I remember I was relying on separate opinions in my entire argument on issue 2, because there was no case that was supporting me. But then I was trying to evolve set practice and all that. So you need to look at that. Equally, I think I've spoken about basic materials. I've spoken about remote coaches. The last thing maybe that I want to touch on is maybe how to use AI. Now, with Jessup, sadly, ChatGPT might not be of so much use to you when it comes to research, but it can be of use to you when it comes to which limbs of arguments you may advance and how to refine your grammar. But ensure you're very careful in your how you prompt, because there's some judges that are very mean. Personally, I really hate AI work. Like, so if I'm reviewing a memo, I was reviewing certain memo for national mood, and I just saw an AI memorial just outwardly, and then I was like, yeah, I just cringed. So ensure that as you prompt it, you don't lose your own language in it. So be very careful with that. But you can utilize it to correct your grammar. The reason why I'm saying you're not supposed to use it for research and summary is because you don't have that avenue when it comes to Jessup. Because the judge will want to find out what does the case law say from page 1 to page 90. So you have to be very aware. Sometimes you can be arguing with the respondent on the interpretation of paragraph 60 of the Congo versus Belgium, like we did in this year's mood. So if you're not aware of paragraph 60, sadly, you can't help yourself. So for someone who has used the summary, and of course, ChatGPT will summarize for you what Congo versus Belgium says, which is correct. But there is a specific paragraph that his bench memorandum has pointed out to them that we're talking about paragraph 60, which is in contention. And they'll ask you, are you aware of paragraph 60? What would you have to say about it? You're not aware of paragraph 60. But if you read the question, you'll at least know there is a slight disparity on this, and this is a question that is supposed to be argued. Also, please read the submissions of, as a clause. As you read a case, cases that have been given to you in the bench, in the basic materials, please read the submissions by the parties, especially the ICJ cases. At least the court website provides for, I think they do, provides for the submissions for both parties, memorandums for both the appellants and the respondents. So ensure you look at what the parties were advancing. And you can actually use that as your own argument. I remember I actually picked an entire argument with Belgium to advance my argument this year. And it was equally very, very persuasive. So you can use that to also know what were the sources that this party was relying on to advance this position. And then I can use that source to advance that position. So basically what I'm saying, then answer a question on your feet, or else you will have a robotic mind where you have a script in your head, which is your memorial, which has been summarized all together, but you can't think outside the box. But when you read a case law inside out, you're able to think outside the box, and it equally helps you to advance your argument in such a good way. But all in all, I can say is Jessup is crazy, but Jessup is fun, and you'll meet some of the best people in the world. It will also evoke how you think on certain issues around the world, and you'll be respected around here for winning Jessup or for just doing Jessup. I respect anyone who has tried doing Jessup because it's heavy, it's bulky, and it has a lot of tears. I don't think there's anyone who has done Jessup without crying. You have to cry even if it's about winning. But all in all, it's a good moot court competition that each and every person should do, and anyone can actually do it. There's just something that I was forgetting. Please watch how oralists are mooting in the international rounds, especially for my good friends from Africa and maybe Asia. We are slightly very loud and combative because that's how our litigation lawyers are. But if you notice, in the rounds in DC, they're quite not very loud, very calm, and you're firm but very calm. So please just watch the rounds each now and then, and you'll understand it. Yeah, I think that's all I had for today, Lorraine.
Okay, thank you so much, Max. Does anyone have any question for Max? Yeah, and congratulations for winning the Spirit of the Jessup Award. Maybe you can, you haven't talked about it in depthly. Maybe you can tell us about it and how you got to win the award.
Okay, because we were having where he dressed like an African, and then all of a sudden they said Spirit of the Jessup. So what happens with the Spirit of the Jessup is that this is an award that is given to the most competitive team that also exhibits fair play. So this is a team that the competitors who are competing feel like this team was very competitive, and equally this team is one that was very fair. They weren't rude. They were very calm. They interacted with people. So there is always an anonymous vote where you select the best team. So the team is always announced during the rounds, the national ball round. That's just before the round of 16. So on that night, you guys are drinking. Of course, you have to be 21 and above. Sorry, I wasn't 21 then, so I wasn't allowed, and all around. And then we were announced as the winners. I remember I was very shocked. I was confused to a larger extent. Is I didn't expect it because we were very sad. We were not proceeding. Of course, you're stressed up and all that. And then we won, and I was so excited. And that's when I realized we received votes from around 112 teams out of the close to over 180 teams that were participating. So just listening to them congratulating you and receiving the banner, I'm probably gonna trace it as you ask questions, but I have the banner here. Yeah, this is my Jessup banner. You may not see it, but yeah, it's makes me feel so happy having won something, traveled to DC and being back. I think it was a really nice experience, and of course I'll always come back to Jessup to support teams and of course to judge in future because I mean Jessup has made me who I am. Yeah, this is my sculpture.
Okay, thank you so much, Maxwell. Max, like that's the name here, Max. I can see Techno has asked a question on the memorials. Please note that we'll be discussing that tomorrow. So yeah. So Max, if you have any concluding statements or anything, we'll appreciate as we move on.
I'd say just thank you so much, first of all, Lauren, for having me here today. It's quite nostalgic having attended this session last year and being back again this year. I feel that the Jessup mood has grown, especially this year. I think we're going to have the highest number of participants ever because of how good the question is and how good the mood is. This is a mood that I can tell you is the most fair mood. You will not have issues of complaints or the judges are not fair because even how the mood is formatted, it's a very automated system. And if you're good, you're good. So give it your best, start early, invest in it, and it will invest back to you. It's not a mood that you prepare overnight. It's a mood that is supposed to be prepared for close to 6 months. So give it your all. Look at everything. Consult professionals. Consult past Jessup mood court participants. Consult your resources. It's a mood that is won in the library, so ensure you win it there. But I am very happy to be back again, and I was very excited to participate in the global rounds. Washington is a beautiful city. The visa is equally very, very nice to have. So please do your best, give it your best, and yeah, all the best to all teams that are participating.
Okay, thank you so much, Max. Hopefully next year when you're having this session, one of you in the session will be the one giving us their experience in the national rounds in Washington, DC, and hopefully not a Kenyan team, as this is an African activity especially. I hope someone from a different country will be participating in this. Max, we look forward to seeing you doing more, and thank you once again for accepting to do this session. Yeah. So now we'll move to the next session. So this is one of the favorite people I have never met. We've only met virtually. So that is Tarazi Mohammed Sheikh. She has already joined us. Tarazi is a student director. We were student directors with her last year for the year 2024-2025, and she's also the student director this year, 2025-2026. Okay, so she'll be leading us on how to prepare for the oral rounds. So listen to her. She has done a lot of trainings on the same, and I hope she'll be of benefit to you. Tarazi, I think since you're here, you can talk about the International Association of Human Judges activity that's in collaboration with Jessup, because I know the deadline is today. So I'll request that you also briefly share it with the participants today so that they can apply. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Hi, am I audible? Am I audible, guys? Thank you
Yes,
so
you are.
I'm so sorry. My Wi-Fi is acting up since this morning. I got a new laptop yesterday, so I'm kind of trying to get around that. It's getting a little. All right. Are you able to see my screen, Lauren?
Not yet.
Is my screen visible?
Yes. Now it's
All right.
visible.
Thank you so much. You might see me lagging a little bit throughout the session. If I see that it's lagging too much, I'm going to turn off my camera because the internet is just being internet. So thank you so much for having me. Lauren is one of my favorite persons in the world. I love her so much. We've worked together at the International Law Students Association ever since. We have had a very close connection working towards law students around the world. And every time I have any event that has anything to do with law students, I kind of think about Lauren and we try to work together. I will speak on the International Association of Women Judges networking event at the end of my session. But let me just begin with my session right now. So what we are going to talk about, although this is the first day of the information session, this should have been in the last day of your event, but because Lauren is so kind and I have something else on that day, she kind of just moved up my session for today because today is the only day that I can do it. The things that we are going to talk about are the how to prepare for oral advocacy or the oral rounds of the Jessup competition. And the second thing that we're going to talk about is how to work with your opponent's memorial that you're going to get before the session. And the third thing that we're going to talk about is rebuttal and surrebuttal. One other thing that I added is additional tips. This is only for students that really want to kind of stand out both in the national and international rounds of the Jessup competition, which is based on completely my experience as a motor judge, compromise writer, whatever you may call it, and now an organizer. When we are preparing for the oral rounds of the Jessup competition, we do a few types of preparations. The basic advocacy preparation that we do contains a lot of itsy bitsy things that we do. Sometimes we do sort of overlook a few things that really matter when we are going to the international rounds. The first thing that we have to do as an oralist or as a team after we are done with the memorial submission is we have to allocate oralist. We have to decide from the team who wants to be the oralist. What happens sometimes is sometimes we already know who is going to be the oralist before when we're selecting the team, somebody already says that I want to be an oralist, so that is set. But in most cases, we have a team that works together to come up with a memorial, but we do not have oralist yet. After the submission of the memorial, we kind of try to work around the allocation of oralist. The second thing that we have to do after we are done with the oralist allocation is thoroughly read our own memorial, the memorial that we submitted to the competition, and then think about the extension of arguments. Sometimes a very common question that we get is, can we extend arguments beyond our memorial during the oral rounds? The answer for every moot, unless they specifically say that you cannot, you can. Particularly with the Jessup competition, you can. So you can extend your arguments as much as you want beyond your written submission. Third thing is time management. What happens sometimes is we are so invested into the practice of the arguments, research, refining our arguments, practicing confidence, practicing in front of the mirror and everything, we forget to practice time. What that does is when we are at the rounds, like the real rounds, in front of the judges, we get nervous, which is very common, which is very normal for everybody. And we forget to simply like fail to adhere to the time. So time management is something that I personally say is you have to start working on from the beginning of your oral rounds practice. The fourth thing is factual and jurisdictional clarity. Factual clarity is reading the mood problem as many times as you can. I know that you have already read it during your memorial submission, but you have to be able to say everything about your mood problem, every single paragraph number, every single detail that comes with the mood problem. The reason I say that is the mood problem, if you sort of try to understand how the mood problem author committee works, is they try to put things here and there to confuse students, and also to put like elements into your arguments that you have to find, and the only way you can find is by reading it as many times as you can. Jurisdictional clarity, on the other hand, is to understand what court you're going to. In the case of Jessup, is the International Court of Justice, and how the International Court of Justice works, what are the jurisdictions, whether you have the jurisdiction to present your argument, what are the things that you can talk about, what are the things that you cannot talk about, etc., etc. Which means that you have to pretty much be prepared with the mood problem and with the jurisdiction of your court at the core of your heart. The fifth thing is the clarity of authorities. By that, I mean, when you're presenting your argument, you're going to refer to laws, you're going to refer to cases, you're going to refer to books, journal articles, authors, judges, separate opinions, etc., etc. But you have to know what authority does that have in front of the bench, the court. So you are presenting before a bench of judges. The judges will ask you about why are you referring to this particular report? Why are you referring to this particular law? Or why are you referring to this particular convention? You have to be able to tell the judge, this is relevant because this has something to do with the mood problem, or this has something to do with this particular issue, or this has something to do with this particular topic of international law, or this particular procedural part of international law. So you have to be very clear about why you are referring to certain things, not only that you're referring to very good arguments or very good authorities. Second thing, which I think most of the time is overlooked, is courtroom etiquette. It is very, very, very important. Those who have gone to international rounds would be able to tell you better that even if it's understandably so that in the national rounds we do not care as much, but when you're in the advanced rounds, when you're in the final round or your semi-final round, or you're in the international rounds, this courtroom etiquette is something that is very important, because judges would usually look for precision as to whether you know the etiquette of the courtroom that you're presenting at. The first thing that you have to know in that regard is what court you're presenting to. As I said, for the Jessup competition, it's always the International Court of Justice. But in any case, if you're not participating in Jessup, or maybe participating in different moot court competition, you would have to know what court you're presenting to. It could be the International Criminal Court, it could be the Supreme Court of your country, it could be the High Court of your country, it could be the Appellate Division of your country, it could be the Permanent Court of Arbitration and whatnot. So whatever court you're going to, you have to know what court you're going to, how that court works, how many judges that court can have, how many officials that does that court have, etc., etc. Second thing is dress code. Dress code, usually we know it's black and white, but for instance, in my case, in my country, we only do black and white. In the courtroom, you have to walk in only black and white. No other color on your body can show, nothing, no red, no heels, like your heels cannot be red, your earrings cannot be red, nothing can be any other color than black and white. But when I went into the international rounds, I saw everybody is wearing every color they want. Some people are even not even wearing suits, and I'm like, what is going on? Because I have been so precise about what to wear, and I've been telling my kids, my students, that I don't want to see any other color than black and white on your body. And then when we are going to the international rounds and we are seeing people wearing brown, pink, light pink, and I'm like, well, this is probably a cultural thing, but we have to come to a common ground. And if you see in the international rounds, you would see everybody's wearing suits, if not suits, something that is similar to suits, something that is very structured, something that doesn't take away the attention of the judges to your dress, and also something that absolutely does not indicate what country you're coming from or what university you're coming from or representing, because to do that, you have a separate event at the Jessup competition. We call it the national ball. Third is body language. Body language would basically mean you have to be so calm and composed throughout your submission that the judge has to feel that you know what you're talking about. Now, we all know that we don't know what we're talking about. When we were going in front of the judges, we don't know what we're talking about. The judges don't know what they're talking about. Nobody knows what anybody's talking about, but we have to pretend that we know exactly what we're talking about. Body language, at one point, I heard a little bit from the previous speaker, Max, who said, we Africans and Asians, I am Asian, by the way, and we are a little more aggressive than the other. I'm going to tell you, he is right. We are not aggressive as such. We have a court system where we do things a little louder than the Western world. So that can come as a sort of different voice or a different line of toning in the courtroom. So you have to sort of be able to read the room, and you have to sort of be able to kind of adjust what is going on in the room or the tone inside of the room, and be as respectful as you can towards the judge and the opposite team. Language. Language is English. Now, the question that I get is, do I have to know English very well in order to do well in the Jessup competition? The answer is no, because I come from a country where English is second language, not even a second language. I mean, it's a privilege to know English. So what happens is students would normally think that students who are going to English schools or studying English would do better in moot courts, but turns out that that is not the case. Because when we are presenting our submissions in the moot court rooms before the judges, we would know that some of the judges are also not very well acquainted with the language of English. The point here is you have to be able to submit your arguments. You have to be able to present your arguments in legal English, the normal English that we speak, the storytelling, the chit chat conversations and everything. That is not what we do in the courtroom. In the courtroom, we have to have very academic language. It doesn't have to be very strictly academic, but it has to be some sort of academic language that we normally do not use in our day-to-day life. So whether you are an expert in English, whether your spoken is very good or not, whether you have an accent or not, does not have anything to do with your performance at the moot court competition, especially with Jessup, because it's so diverse of a competition. Finally, communication between team members. This is subject to the rules of the competition. In our Jessup competition, if you read the rule books, you would see that there are codes of how you can talk to your teammate during the submission, but you have to be very careful not to violate those rules, because if we receive a complaint from any team or any judge that says that you have violated the rules of communication between team members, that could go against the team's favor. Structure of your submission. So you're done with all of the basic preparations, you're done with the courtroom etiquette, your dresses are ready, you are ready to go. Where is your submission? The structure of your submission, in my preference, is something that looks like this. You have to first, when you're going to the podium, the first thing, of course, you do is you introduce yourself and your co-agent. For the Asian and African students, I say that when you say your name, you have to say it very slowly and as clearly as possible, because we have complicated names. And the judges can sometimes have problems sort of noting down the names. If they mistake names, which is a very rare case, but if it happens, it goes against the student that name has been mistaken, then somebody else gets your marks. So what I suggest is when you go to the podium and you introduce yourself, you say your name very clearly, take your time. This is the most important part of the submission, that you state your name. Then you state the name of your co-agent. After that, you go on to introduce the case. Sometimes I see that students come on the podium, they say their names, they just say that they're applicant or respondent, and they just go on about their arguments. They do not specify the case. They do not tell me as a judge what issues they're going to talk about, what issues their co-agent is going to talk about, what are the time allocations, and what are the time allocations for rebuttals or rebuttal. These are vital informations. These are not time-taking things. You just need like 30 seconds to finish this part, but this is a very important part because this sets the ground for you to sort of go on and submit your arguments. So what you do is basically you come on the podium, you say, Mr. President and Your Excellencies, or if it's a Madam President, then Madam President and Your Excellencies, my name is Tarazi Mohammed Sheikh, and my co-agent is, let's say, Lauren. I wish she was. And then you say that the case before the court is the case concerning this. I will speak on the first two issues, and my co-agent will speak on the second two issues. I will speak for 20 minutes. My co-agent will speak for 21 minutes, and we reserve, let's say, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes for rebuttal or rebuttal. That's it. You're done. You're set to go. And then you offer the judges with a factual or jurisdictional clarity. So you say to the judges that do your excellencies need any factual or jurisdictional clarity, or is there anything that I can help you with the factual or jurisdictional matters of this case? In most cases, the judges will say, no, just proceed with your arguments. But if the judge is bad like me, they're going to say, yeah, I want to learn about the facts, or I want to learn about the jurisdiction, just to set you kind of off to understand whether you actually know what you're talking about. And my preparation for that was I would have like 2 lines of the fact and 2 lines of the jurisdiction in my head, like ready to go, because that question could be thrown at me at any point of the argument. So I would just not let that take me down. Then you have to move to your submissions. And you say that, Your Excellencies, moving on with my submissions, the first issue that we're going to talk about, and then you outline your sub-arguments. So what happens in the Jessup competition, if you're new to the competition, is one issue has several sub-issues. Several sub-issues have their other sub-arguments. So you have to kind of outline that to the judge before the starting of your submission, so that the judge is kind of prepared to listen to whatever you have to say in the next the next course of few minutes. And then you have to state very clearly what is your main submission, what is your alternative submission, and what is your secondary submission. The difference between the three is you have a list of submissions that you're going to make. This is your script. This is your best arguments. So you have these prepared. But there is one judge at the bench that is simply not satisfied with one of the arguments that you presented. So he keeps asking questions. He keeps asking you, do you have anything else on this matter? I'm not satisfied. Do you have anything else? Like, I'm not feeling it. And then you have to come up with an alternative submission, which you already had, but it's just because he's asking, you're just saying it like earlier than you normally would have. And then if he's still not satisfied with an alternative argument, then you have a secondary argument, which you already had, but because this judge is not satisfied with anything you're saying, you're just, bringing that up. So you're not doing any extra work to bring up 3 separate submissions. It's the existing submissions, but you're deciding based on the judge's expressions or judge's questions, what is your main submission, what is your alternative submission, and what is your secondary submission. Finally, once you're done with one sub-issue or one issue or one sub-argument, you say that this is the end of that particular issue. I am now moving to the second issue, which is you are concluding your submission. Sometimes what happens is if just think about the perspective of a judge. I just came to the competition. I'm not familiar with the mood problem. I had it just this morning. I got the mood problem. I opened the mood problem 1 hour before the competition. I am in networking with everybody around me. I came to the competition. I'm so overwhelmed. And then I have to listen to arguments. So I wouldn't be, as attentive as anyone would expect me. So I wouldn't know what is when you're concluding your submission unless you tell me. It is very easy for me to just sort of get lost into the arguments. So once you're done with your submission and you say that unless your excellencies have any further queries regarding this issue, I would like to move on to my next submission. When you say that, the judge knows that this is done. The first issue is done. The second issue is what we're going to talk about. If you do not do that, sometimes what happens is the judges just come back and ask you a question from the first issue, but you're already in your third issue. That's a problem because that confuses you, that confuses the entire team. That's a mess. So you conclude your submission and then you move on to your next submission. And this is how basically you do the rest of your submissions, the rest of your arguments, and everything that you have. Question answer. The most dreading part of the competition is question answer because you can be prepared, you can be ready, you have a script, you have a structure, you have your dresses, you have everything. But the dreading part, you have to go in front of the judges and judges can listen, that's fine, but they will ask you questions and you have to be able to answer the questions. But my personal opinion is question answers is the best part of any moot court competition. I personally, because I cannot go back to being a mooter anymore in my life, the only thing that I miss about mooting, the best part of my mooting experience was the question answer, because that is the time that I feel like a human being. That is the part that the judge, basically a judge of the Supreme Court of my country, is talking to me. So that's crazy. I am just a first year law student or second year law student. So that is crazy for me. There are 4 types of questions that we face. If we know what kind of question that is, and that's basically it, we would be able to answer the questions, because if we're able to prepare a script, if we're able to research on this matter for like 3 or 4 months, we should be able to answer that question. It's very easy. We just have to be able to understand that whenever the judge is asking questions, that means my submission is going well. I, as a judge, or anybody as a judge, when they sit as a judge, they stop asking questions when they see that the students are simply not good enough. So we only ask questions to those who we think are doing well, and we want to know more, and we want to help them learn more. There are 4 types of questions that we face in a moot court, or you could say in Jessup. First is a factual question, the question that relates to the moot problem, the question that relates to the compromise. It comes from the compromise. So anybody could ask, so what was the relation with this person, with that person? What did that person do? What in paragraph number 35, what does it say? What can you explain that? The whole thing about the moot compromise, you have to have it basically ready in your mouth to say at any point of time, because this is the document that you had for the longest time, and you have to have it. There shouldn't be any point of the compromise that the judges ask you and you cannot answer. Second kind of question is legal questions that are concerning the cases, the laws, the conventions, the rules, the regulations, the documents, the books, the journalists that you were referring to. They will ask you questions. So you're saying that Article 2 of the UN Charter states this. The judge can ask you something about Article 3, or what does it say? What does that say? Do you have a commentary to that? Do you have a case law for that? Do you have a report to support your argument? Do you have a statistic to support your argument? These are legal questions. Legal questions you have to answer with legal points. You cannot answer legal questions with a fact. Sure, fact can help or substantiate your legal answer, but your legal answer has to be very, it has to be surrounding the legal point of your. Third kind of question is a skill, the evidence that you're submitting, do you think it is admissible before this court? Or let's say in your moot problem, there is one part of the moot problem that says there had been documents that had been leaked from certain government, and then you're dealing with that in your argument. The judge can ask you, does that kind of document have any admissibility before this court? That is a procedural question. To be prepared for the procedural questions, you have to understand the kind of courtroom you're in, and how that courtroom works, what are the jurisdiction, what are the admissibility, what are the evidential rules, etc., etc. Finally, hypothetical questions. Sometimes the judges they're very let's say busy. They didn't have the time to read the compromise, they didn't have the time to read your memorial, they are not aware of what is going on, so they are going to come up with something that is very hypothetical. For instance, they would pick something from the contemporary current affairs of the world, and they're going to ask you questions. For instance, they could ask you, so this recognition of Palestine as a state in this country, what do you think about that? And you'd be thrown off thinking, what does that have to do with my mood or my submission? But you have to be able to answer. You cannot tell the judge, this has nothing to do with my problem. This has nothing to do with my argument. So hypothetical questions are questions that are hypothetically sort of designed to test your knowledge of law, or test your knowledge of contemporary happenings, and test of your knowledge, test of the extent that you have done your research. Now, the pro tip for answering any question and to do well as a mooter or as an oralist is to answer the question with a yes or no if you can, followed by an explanation, and then transition back to your argument. Sometimes I see the students are one, they're not directly answering the question because they haven't understood the question, or they have understood the question but they simply don't know the answer of the question. If you do not know answer of any question, that is perfectly fine. Know that there is not one mooter in the world, there's not one lawyer in the world that knows everything about everything. So if you don't know an answer, you simply say that, Your Excellency, the judge is not going to mind. They're not going to hamper your score sheet. They're not going to be mad. Nothing happens. You move on with your submission. On the other hand, when you do not know answer to a question and you say, and you keep trying to like make it up with different things that you know, the judge is annoyed, the courtroom is annoyed, everybody is mad, you're wasting the time of the court. You don't do that. If you simply do not know, say I don't know. If you know something, then only stick to that part, but do not beat around the bush. Do not sort of like try coming up with how much you know about something instead of like trying to answer the question. Working with opponent's memorial. So during the oral rounds, before the oral rounds, we received the opponent's memorials. This could be 1 hour before the submission or the round. It could be 2 days before the round. It could be a month before the round, depending on the moot court that you're going to. In most cases for the Jessup competition, it's usually a few hours before the competition, but in the national rounds, it depends on the country. Whatever country has whatever rules. The first thing that you do after you get the opponent's memorial is you thoroughly read the whole memorial. You do not divide and rule. You do not tell everybody that you read this part, you read that part. I mean, sure, you could if you have shortage of time, but I think it's a good investment if you read the whole thing. The reason I say that is because not only we are going to refute their arguments, but also we are going to steal some of their arguments. So when we are going through that, we're going to find articles and cases and laws that we haven't seen and we didn't know existed, but they did because they researched, and we are happy because we're going to steal that for our arguments. So we have to steal their arguments and pretend that I knew this before you, so I'm going to refute that. Nothing in somebody's memorial, it's unlikely that you're going to find something in their memorial that you haven't considered at all if you have done moderately good research. So there is nothing that's going to be like completely out of the bat. You haven't ever seen that thing, you haven't ever heard that title and whatever. So whenever you're reading that memorial, you have to take note for two things. One, you want to refute the arguments, and second, you have to take some of the arguments into your submission and present that as your own submission. Then the third thing you do is you have to gain insight into the style and substance of their arguments. When you're reading somebody's memorial, you would have an impression of how are they as a team. But mind you, sometimes what happens is the memorial is so strong because they have a very good faculty, they have very good backup system and everything. Their memorial is top notch. When they're appearing in the court, they're not what we saw in their memorial. But the opposite can also happen. The memorial is not good enough. You're not liking it. It's filled with typos. It's filled with spelling mistakes. Whatever they're doing, you're not understanding. I mean, you think you could do better. And then when they're appearing in the court, they're very smart. They're very well knowledge. They're very well prepared. So anything can happen. You have to kind of take the style and substance of the memorial into consideration and be prepared, but also be prepared for something that is completely opposite. So do not underestimate somebody because their memorial is not strong, and do not overestimate somebody because their memorial is so strong. Find out points for rebuttal and surrebuttal. The person in the team that's going to do the rebuttal and surrebuttal, it's a golden opportunity for them to have something prepared before they already appear. Because taking notes during the whole round for rebuttal and surrebuttal is a hectic job. I've always done that. I would never trust anybody in my team to do the rebuttal surrebuttal. So I would always say, no, I want to do the rebuttal and surrebuttal, and I'm not going to take anybody's point. Do not give me any points, because I'm going to do the whole thing, and do not tell me what to do. But you don't have to be like that. What you have to do is you have to ask your teammates you basically ask your teammates to give you points that they think is important for the rebuttal and surrebuttal. After the rounds are done, when you have to do the surrebuttal or rebuttal, you kind of tick into whatever in the memorial was the thing that you pointed out for the rebuttal and surrebuttal. And they also said that in the podium, because mind you, for the rebuttal and surrebuttal, you can only argue on points that has been said on the podium, not solely on the written submission. So if somebody said something wrong in the memorial, but they did not say it in the podium, you cannot refute that in your rebuttal or surrebuttal. Rebuttal and surrebuttal. The person that is doing rebuttal and surrebuttal has to be the most, I would say, awake person. Be aware of what is going on throughout the competition, throughout the rounds, what the opponents are saying, what your team members are saying, what the judges are asking the opponents, what the judges are asking your own team members. You have to be aware of everything that is happening if you're the person that is doing rebuttal and surrebuttal. Rebuttal and surrebuttal, if anybody is completely new to the mooting culture, rebuttal and surrebuttal is the ending of an entire competition where once the applicant team is done with their main submission, the respondent is done with their own submissions, then you have the opportunity to refute something that the other part said in the podium. Rebuttal is for applicants. So the applicant would come first and then do the refute the arguments. Then the person from the respondent would come and refute the arguments that is only said in the rebuttal. So the person doing surrebuttal has to be extra careful, because the only time that he's getting to prepare his surrebuttal points is when the rebuttal is happening, which is 3 minutes max, or like 4 minutes. And then you have to come and refute the arguments that has been said only in the rebuttal. How to do your rebuttal? The applicant part of the counter arguments, you have to first talk to your team and decide how many minutes do you want to allocate for the rebuttal. I suggest it has to be 3 minutes, maximum 4 minutes, because the more time that you put into the rebuttal thing, the more sort of to prepare, come up with points, it has to be crisp, so on and so forth. So the best thing to do is to have 2 or 3 minutes at max for rebuttal. For rebuttal, you have to actively listen what they're saying at the podium, because that is the only thing that you can refute. You have to figure and prioritize the weakest points that they have in their argument. Sometimes what happens is they have, let's say, 10 weak points that you want to refute. These are very good points that you want to refute, but you can only do 3 or 4 points. And you have to be very clear at the beginning of your rebuttal that, Your Excellencies, we have 2 points in rebuttal, or Excellencies, we have 3 points in rebuttal. You have to justice all issues. You have to talk about all issues that you think are bad. You can't only talk about issue A and issue B that you think you're good at. Finally, you have to refute with utmost clarity, and you have to maintain professionalism, because in the rebuttal part of the submission, we sometimes get very aggressive, very passionate. We cannot do that. We have to be as professional as we can while we do the refutal. As I said, you cannot bring any new points of argument during your rebuttal. So rebuttal, as I said before, you have to first do the time allocation, which I would say is lesser than what they already did in the rebuttal. So rebuttal, if rebuttal is 3 minutes, your rebuttal should be 2 minutes. You have to anticipate what could be the rebuttal points, because if you do not, then you'll be in trouble, because you'll only have the time that they're taking to do the rebuttal to figure out what you want to do for your rebuttal. You have to clarify and reinforce the arguments with legal authorities. Whatever you said in your main argument, are being questioned by the applicants. And now it is your point to go back and tell the applicant that no, what we said is right because of this, but you cannot repeat the arguments that you already said in your main argument. And finally, you have to stay composed. The pro rule is that you must only stick to the points that has been raised in the rebuttal part of the applicants. Additional tips for anybody who wants to stand out as an oralist: do not take any shortcuts. There is absolutely no shortcuts if you want to be a good oralist. You have to research, like Max said, the ICJ judgments are like 800 pages. You have to unfortunately read 800 pages. You cannot control F, the only important point, and then you're done. If you want to stand out as an oralist, if you want to be top 10 in the world, then you have to read 800 pages. You don't have to take note of everything, but you have to know that this is 800 pages and I've read 800 pages. Knowledge of contemporary issues, judgments, and score sheets, that is something that you do. You have to be aware of what is happening surrounding international law around the country, around the world, in your country, in around the world. Whatever international affairs that are happening, you have to be aware of that. And finally, you have to reach out to experienced mooters, judges, people who have done mooting before, for any sort of assistance. It doesn't have to be within your country. It could be anywhere in the world. You could reach out to the champion of the Jessup competition if you want. You just have to find their email and send them an email and say, I'm from this country, I want to meet you. There is not going to be a time I'm telling you that they're going to say, no, I cannot, or they're going to ghost you. They are going to get back to you at any point of time. This is the end of my session. I don't know if I'm running out of time or what. I'm not seeing the messages. I can't. But this is my email, just in case if you want to, at any point of time, reach out to me for anything at all. Please feel free. And if you have any questions, please, I'm very happy to answer.
Okay, thank you so much, Tarazi. I can see some questions are coming in. Yes, if the judges do not ask for an alternate argument, do we still mention it at the end of our main argument?
That is a very good question. That depends on how much time do you have. Because sometimes when we are practicing at home with our structured submission or our script, we have a lot of time. So we think, oh, I have 2 minutes left. This is for the judge to ask me extra questions. But during the submission, what happens is I'm already running out of times, and the judge is if they're not asking for something, do not even mention that you have think that's something important, keep it for the rebuttal. When you're going to refute some arguments from the respondents, you would need some new facts, so use that. But if the judge is not asking for alternative arguments or secondary arguments, do not even go there, because if your main argument is good enough and they're happy with it, when you're presenting your secondary argument, they're going to think, oh, I mean, then probably that was not your best submission, that is why you're backing it up. You don't have to do that.
We have another question. What difference do you expect in terms of questions comparing the judges in national rounds and the judges in international rounds?
That is also a very, very, very important question. The difference with the national rounds and international rounds is a stark dissimilarity of sort of how they view the competition. In the national rounds, the judges are normally lawyers or judges from your own country, or like academics from your own country, your own courtroom. They have their own set of understanding of the facts. They are not always going to be well versed with the provisions of international law. So you're not going to expect a lot of international law based questions. But in the international rounds, on the other hand, you would see everybody sort of are familiar with the Jessup competition. They're either alumni of Jessup competition, or they're practicing international law, or they're judges at the international courts. So they would ask you questions deeply from the international law conventions, international law materials. In the national rounds, however, they're going to ask you more questions about how the national things work, or things that are very basic in international law. So if you are doing very well in the national rounds, very good, but do not think that that's going to be the standard in the international rounds. The second thing is the national rounds lawyers or academics, especially, they do have a tendency of sort of emphasizing on how you treat them as a judge because they're not judges. And they are usually the victims of judges in their own countries or whatever. So sometimes they are more focused on how you're treating them with Your Excellency, and much obliged and all that. So do keep in mind those things. I'm saying that because I'm from Asia and we have that in Asia. So the judges are trying to feel like judges. So we are trying to make them feel like judges. On the other hand, in the international rounds, they know that this is nothing for them, and we know that this is nothing for them. So we are kind of just going very casual. We're focusing on the argument instead of anything else that is going on. I think Lauren shared the information about the IAWJ thing, the International Association of Women Judges. That is going to happen very soon. We are going to, the information is already on the chat box. I'm not going to elaborate on that more, but if you have any questions, please do reach out to me through email, and I am going to send this slide to Lauren after the session. I think there is one more question, Lauren.
Yeah, please clarify the team structure in Jessup notes.
Okay, that is a question about Jessup rules. According to the Jessup rules, you can have up to 5 team members and you can have up to 5 coaches. Coaches are not mandatory. You can have coaches, you can have 5 coaches, 1 coaches, 2 coaches, or you can have no coaches at all. For the team members, you need at least 3 members of your team. That is mandatory, but you can have up to 5. 2 oralists and 1 researcher is a must have, and then the rest you can decide depending on the resources that you have. But this is the official rule. But if you think you can have 6 members of your team, the 5 members, I mean, you can register 5 members, but if you want to have more team members that can help you with the research, or they want to learn, they want to participate next year, more than happy to just include them in the team. But the official rule is you need to have at least 3 members for team members. And coaches, if you do not have coaches, that is fine. We have resources, we provide remote coaches. So if you do not have any coaches, please reach out to Ilsa. Ilsa is going to help you find a coach from a remote place, and that's going to help you with the preparation.
Okay, so I cannot see any other question coming in. Any concluding remarks?
Concluding remarks is thank you for having me. This is wonderful to be back. I honestly thought that I could not make it this year, but thanks to Lauren, she's been very kind. And just know that you're in good hands. Lauren is an amazing mooter, amazing representative of the Jessup competition. We are so lucky to have her, and I hope to see some of you guys at Washington, D.C. And please feel free to reach out to me at any point of time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Tarazi. As I said, she's the student director of ILSA, so she's also representing your welfare as students to the board administering the competition. So if you have any questions still, you can always direct it to me and I'll be able to reach out to our facilitators for the day. Ayenel, do you have any question? Thank you so much, Shirin.
We are also glad to say thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you too. Thank you too. So we'll have the next session tomorrow, still at the same time. I'll request you come early so that we have a lot of time to discuss everything, as it will be more extensive tomorrow. We'll have a discussion on state. Okay, yeah, we'll have a discussion on state responsibility. We'll have a discussion on how to analyze the compromise, and we'll also have a discussion on how to prepare for your written rounds. And also, as we're preparing, on the 3rd day, we'll invite a seasoned judge. His name is Mr. Jeffrey Robbins, to come answer your questions on anything to do with the moot competition. So what questions do you have for a judge? He's a judge. He has judged a lot of international rounds. So if you have any questions, kindly address them to me so that I can compile the same for the sake of Friday. And also so that the conversation can be more engaging. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I have kept you for four more minutes. I apologize for that. And have a good evening, a good day from wherever you are, and see you tomorrow.